The man across the street was somebody I trusted. That is the part that I struggle with to admit. Because when people hear stories like this, they always ask the same questions. Didn't you notice something was wrong? Didn't he seem strange? Like, didn't you get a bad feeling? As much as I hate to admit it, the answer is no. He didn't. He seemed normal. He smiled at me every morning. He waved when he saw me outside. We talked about the weather, sports, work, just random things that would make him seem normal. I thought he was a good person. I did. But I was wrong. Because before Daniel moved in, another family lived across the street. The Williams. And one day, they disappeared. I had lived in that neighborhood for almost 11 years. It wasn't anything special, no giant houses, no fancy streets, no uptight rich people like you'd think. Just normal people living normal lives. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone's name. Where neighbors borrowed tools from each other, where people left their doors unlocked because they trusted people enough around them. The Williams family was one of those families everyone knew. They had 2 kids, a dog that barked at everything, a dad who was always outside fixing something, and a mom who waved every time she drove past. They weren't my best friends, or anything like that, but they were familiar. They were comforting. They were a part of the neighborhood. That's why it felt so strange when they vanished. I first noticed something was wrong because their house was too quiet. I remember looking outside one morning while making coffee. Their cars were still there. The porch light was still on. Their trash cans were sitting by the road. Everything looked normal. Hell, at first I didn't even think anything of it. People leave, people go on trips, people get busy. I understood that. But what I didn't understand was, after a few days, because nobody had seen them. Nobody had talked to them. Nobody knew where they were. The police came, they asked questions. They knocked on the doors, they looked around the house, but there sadly wasn't much that they could tell, nor could anyone tell them. I hadn't seen anything, neither had anyone else. There was no big argument, no suspicious person. They were just gone. Eventually the neighborhood stopped talking about it. Not because people forgot, but because people didn't know what else to do. Life kept moving on. People still had jobs. Kids still had school. Bills still needed to be paid. The empty house across the street just became something everyone tried not to think about. Until 3 months later, someone moved in. His name was Daniel. I remember seeing the moving truck pull up. I was outside getting the mail when he walked over. He smiled. "Hey, I'm Daniel." I introduced myself. We shook hands, and that was it. Nothing weird, nothing suspicious, just a new neighbor. Honestly, I felt bad for him. Moving into a house where something terrible happened couldn't have been easy. But Daniel didn't seem bothered. He seemed excited. He told me he liked the neighborhood. He said it was quiet, that it was safe. I remember agreeing with him. It's ironic looking back, really. But Daniel became the kind of neighbor everyone liked. He helped people, he kept his yard clean. He bought groceries inside for older neighbors. He even fixed my mailbox when the post started leaning. I remember thanking him. I remember telling someone, he's actually a pretty good guy. This sentence bothers me more than anything else. Because I meant it. I wasn't pretending. I truly believed it. The first strange thing happened about a month after he moved in. I was outside when Daniel was cleaning out the backyard. The old William family shed. I walked over and joked with him. "Find anything interesting in there?" He laughed. "Mostly garbage." I looked toward the shed. The door was open. There was a smell coming from inside. Not strong, just weird. I noticed it, but Daniel didn't react. I figured it was just old stuff. A shed sits closed for months, things get dirty, animals get in. You know, normal responses, normal assumptions. There are a million explanations. But part of me still wanted one. A few weeks passed, then I noticed the smell again. This time, it was stronger. I remember standing outside one afternoon and looking across the street, at the shed. I told myself I was being stupid. I told myself I was imagining things. Because what was I supposed to think? That something horrible happened? That the friendly guy that helped everybody and everybody loved was hiding something? No, that's insane. The thing about fear is that your brain tries to protect you. It gives you excuses. It says, you're overreacting, you're paranoid. There's probably a normal explanation. And most of the time, there is. But sometimes there isn't. The day I found out the truth started like any other day. I was outside when I noticed Daniel wasn't home. His car was gone, the street was quiet, and for some reason, I looked at the shed. I don't know why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe some part of me already knew something was wrong. But I still walked across the street. I told myself I was just checking. I told myself I was gonna find some old trash, maybe a dead animal. Something that would make me feel stupid for worrying. I opened the shed door, and immediately, I knew something was wrong. The smell hit me first, then my eyes adjusted, and everything inside of me froze. Because the thing I had been trying not to imagine was real. The Williams family hadn't left. They hadn't moved away. They hadn't disappeared. They had been there the entire time, but not alive. They were 3 rotting corpses inside of his shed, lined up perfectly on the ground, as if he had planned it, as if he wanted to dispose of them but didn't. I don't remember how long I stood there. I don't remember what I said. I just remember backing away, looking across the street, at Daniel's house, at the windows, at the place where I had watched him drink coffee every morning, where I had waved, where I had hugged with him, where I had laughed with him. And suddenly, every memory felt different. Every conversation, every smile, every time he said hello, it all had a completely different meaning. The police arrived later that day. Daniel wasn't home yet, and that was the strangest part. He had no idea. He didn't know the secret was gone. He didn't know his facade was ruined. He didn't know the walls he had built around were cracked. When they arrested him, everyone on the street was shocked. Nobody wanted to believe it. Because nobody wants to believe they knew someone capable of something horrible. People always imagine evil as something obvious. Something you can see coming. But Daniel wasn't like that. He was the guy who helped neighbors. The guy who waved. The guy everyone trusted. Including me. I still live in that same neighborhood. But it doesn't feel the same anymore. Sometimes I look across the street. At that house. At the place where Daniel lived. And I think about how many times I stood outside and talked to him. How many times I smiled at him. How many times I called him a good person. Not knowing the sack of shit he was. The scariest thing isn't that someone like Daniel existed. It's that someone like Daniel can't exist, and you'd never even know. Because sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the stranger hiding in the dark. The shadow under the street lamp. Sometimes they're the person standing right across the street.